Thursday's severe thunderstorm at its highest point had almost 1 million people without electricity. This morning, thousands more still waiting for theirs to return. So joining me is Chief Medical Officer for the City of Houston, Dr. David Persse, to talk about, Dr. Persse, what do we do with that food that was in our fridge? I mean, we realize that some of these things could have gone bad and that could make us sick.
Yeah, absolutely, Haley. And this can be a serious problem. So we talk about a rule of fours. And so you want to keep your food below 40 degrees. And most refrigerators are set between 33 and 39 degrees. That's a pretty narrow window. And then the other four is 4 hours. So once your food is above 40 degrees for 4 hours, it starts going bad. And that means the bacteria on it start growing. They secrete toxins on the food. The food may look fine and it may smell fine, but it's still dangerous to eat, particularly things like meat, fish, even fruits and vegetables. Anything that you normally would keep refrigerated, once it gets above 40 degrees, it's only 4 hours and it's starting to go bad on you.
Dr. Persse, what about food from the freezer? You know, sometimes we hear if you never open the freezer door, then it'll stay good. So if we never open the freezer door, is it possible that here on the 4th day since we've lost power that it would still, anything in there still be safe?
You know, so it is possible, all right, because some of the freezers are really very, you know, they're very robust, right? And so if you don't open them, there's a chance that it could say, now, the way you'll easily know is when you finally do open it, if there's ice crystals in there, if things are still, have some, you know, are still frozen, then they're probably okay. But if they are thawed, I'm afraid that they become dangerous to you at that point. So it really depends on how robust your freezer is, and hopefully you never opened it.
Yeah, and when you say it becomes dangerous to us, like what is the danger? What could happen if you eat bad food?
The danger is that bacteria will start to grow. There's bacteria on everything, but the bacteria on our food that needs to be refrigerated, it's not like the bacteria on your desktop or on your hands. It's bacteria that's particular to certain foods, and so that starts to grow, and many of them secrete a toxin. So even if you were to cook the food and kill the bacteria, the toxin is still there, and so when you eat it, and it sets off your usual GI things, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, you know, things none of us want to have, but this is when you get it.
What about, do you know, like, what about condiments or other things that can typically be left out, but if they've been refrigerated, can they and thawed or whatever, can they go back out on your table? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so that's a good question. It kind of goes to how you've taken care of it. So there are a lot of things. Let's talk about ketchup, for example.
Yeah.
You know, you purchase ketchup off the shelf. It's at room temperature. You take it home. It has a seal on it. Ketchup in particular is pretty acidic, and so bacteria have a hard time growing on it. Now, you know, in my house, we put the ketchup in the refrigerator, so that's probably going to be okay because that is often stored at room temperature. Yeah. The thing, though, is that once you break the seal on things, and that's when some bacteria, because when it comes to you from the manufacturer, it's pretty much sterile on the inside. And so, then there are other things like, for example, your butter. Now, you know, when you put butter on the table, and there's lots of different knives and forks and things going to that butter, and then you put it back in the refrigerator, that has now been clearly contaminated with whatever was on the fork stuff. So things like that, you know, I would be more likely to just go ahead and get fresh condiments that way.
What are the symptoms, though, that somebody might be experiencing food poisoning if they, you know, accidentally do ingest some of this food that might now be contaminated?
Yeah, so it's going to start off with just you know, basically sort of feeling kind of lousy in your belly. You may get some rumbling and some cramps. And depending on what you got infected with, you may wind up with vomiting and diarrhea, or nausea and vomiting, or you may wind up with diarrhea, or you may wind up with both. And for most of us, it's just a miserable experience to go through, and it can last for a day or two or more. But for people that have got chronic illnesses, particularly the elderly, and of course the little ones, you know, it can then set off other medical problems that you have and set them down a different path that you don't want. So again, for most of us, it's just a really miserable experience, but we really need to worry about, and in particular the elderly who've got complicated medical problems. It could set off other issues that we don't want to have occurring.
So just like so many medical things that we ask you about, this is one of those situations where if you're living with somebody who might be, you know, have another medical condition or just be in those vulnerable age groups, you just don't want to chance it, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Haley. And, you know, and a lot of this just goes back to common sense, right? And a little bit of pre-planning, thinking ahead about what you're going to do. And so for folks if you generally keep in the refrigerator, if you generally keep in the refrigerator and your refrigerator has been without power for several days, even, and this is talking about the refrigerator, even if you haven't opened the door, the things in there, pretty much all of it has gone bad, unfortunately. And I would just trash it and not risk it, because look, if your house is without power, you've got other things you've got to deal with. And you need to be healthy to do those things. And you need to be healthy to take care of your family members. And so this is a real easy way to make a simple mistake and get yourself sick when it's so easily avoided. And again, the things that are in your pantry, the things that aren't refrigerated, they're fine to eat.
Yeah. Great point. Dr. David Persse, we always appreciate you joining us. Really good topics this morning, though, since everybody is kind of in this same boat without having power and having so much to clean up. So we'll definitely clip these articles or clip these interviews and put them in an article on click2houston.com. We appreciate your time.